Donald Trump isn't just eroding democracy, he's also taking aim at the free press. This week, the White House said it would handpick news outlets allowed to cover and question Trump daily. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said every journalist deserves a seat. Well, during Trump's meeting with Ukraine's president today, that included Russian state media. Wire services, Reuters and the Associated Press were not granted access. Meanwhile, this week, Jeff Bezos, billionaire owner of the Washington Post, said the paper's opinion section will now be focused on personal liberties and free markets. In today's Post, columnist Dana Milbank notes, this much is clear. If we as a newspaper and as a country are to defend his twin pillars, then we must redouble our fight against the single greatest threat to personal liberties and free markets in the United States today, President Donald Trump. Dana Milbank joins me now. Dana, excuse my mispronunciation of readers, but I'm glad to have you, my friend. I'm glad to have you. Look, I want to start with this idea of what's happening right now, which is sort of symptomatic, I guess, of what we see happening at the Post. You remember the White House Correspondents Association. You write about how this move against, one of those pillars is playing out. How does it show authoritarianism and threaten all of our freedoms? Could you just explain where you were going with your piece today?
Particularly as it relates to the situation with the White House press pool. I mean, this has been happening. I think it goes back to 1914. The press determines, you can't have the entire press corps going into the Oval Office. There's just too many of us. But the way we'd done it for generations is reporters would choose among themselves. There'd be a rotating pool as to who would go in to question the president. This is how reporters wanted it, but it's also how the White House wanted it, because they didn't want to be seen as picking favorites or deciding who was going to cover them. But of course, as with everything else, this is all out the window with Donald Trump, and they want to choose exactly who's going to be questioning the president, and that's likely to be Fox News and Breitbart, and as you've just mentioned, Russian state media. So it's in countries like Russia, in countries like Iran, this is how it works. The government chooses who gets to cover the leader and essentially what they say. This has never happened in the modern United States until now.
So we have come from Inauguration Day, where we had the tableau of these billionaires. Jeff Bezos and company is the head of a very important and powerful newspaper, standing there aligned behind the president of the United States, ahead of the cabinet, very much at the center of President Trump's inaugural proceedings. What does that tell you, that this administration has moved the way it has with respect to the press, and the fact that the owners of these media outlets seemingly are willing to move with him?
Well, it's a complicated situation, because the media, as you know, has been in decline for a good quarter century now. We've been getting weaker and weaker as the business model has failed, whether it's in broadcast or in print. And what's replaced it? Well, there's been some nonprofit models. There's Substack. There's social media. But to maintain these sort of mainstream news organizations, it has been the purview of billionaires, because it's basically become a vanity project, because they're not really economically viable. So in some ways, that was inevitable. And it wasn't, necessarily by itself a bad thing. But again, you layer Donald Trump on top of this, who talked about returning the forgotten man and woman. It turns out the forgotten man is the American billionaire, most prominently Elon Musk, running amok through the federal government. So it's a difficult position for all of us to be in as journalists, because we all do have either corporate masters, right, or I should say most of us have corporate masters, or billionaires. And, the power of the press belongs, the saying goes, to the person who owns one.